Hello and welcome to the Wildcard Rewind podcast. Week 12 is in the books, and what a special week it was. Let's get into it.
I just want to rewind to when we were younger. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Yes, welcome in. Week 12 was absolute fire. That last quarter of the early slate was genuinely insane. And we are now so close to the fantasy playoffs. I think actually in some leagues, they might be starting in week 13. So it is absolutely crunch time. And for that, we have such a special guest today. We have no Paul. Paul is working. We have no Hannah. Hannah has just got back into the country. So instead, we have the best one of Wildcard back again. Yes. Mags, how are you doing? Lovely to see you, my friend.
Oh, it's great to be back 3 weeks in a row, Lewis, on the Wildcard Rewind. That theme music just hits different, doesn't it?
It's a special song, and I know it has a special place for you because I think you're the person who chose it in the first place.
It was, yeah. That was me. That's why it hits different. It's sort of self pat on the back there from me. But thanks for letting everybody else know that, Lewis. It's good to get my name attached to something so great.
Absolutely. Well, while we're talking about it, you've been doing some fantastic work. For a few years now on the Dynasty Hot Seat, but I really think the work you've been doing with the way too early rookie drafts has been absolutely special. I've been so impressed with it. How have you found doing them? And how has sort of your process been of starting up that work on the rookie class this early?
Yeah, it's been amazing chatting about these. I mean, last year I did it and called the shows way too early, and I started in January. This year I started in October. So this is really, really way too early. But I was doing so much stuff with the rookies anyway, watching, as many of the games or highlight packages or different players as possible, like scouting all these guys. I was like, look, I've got all this information here. Why not get some Debbie guys on and chat through? And the best thing about it is this will change so much. If you look last January, Troy Franklin was a locked in Dynasty first round pick, and we see how much it changes. So it's just been great chatting. All the drafts are so different because we know so little about these guys still. So it's definitely something to go and check out on the all new Dynasty Hot Seat. You can see this little logo there. It's bit of a rebrand going on. I'm very, very pleased with it. Thanks for shouting that out, Lewis. Very kind. And of course, we got to say while we're here, we got the microphone. Dynasty Pancake as well. Fantasy Pancake crushing it too, Lewis. Right? You got that 2-week-old waiver video that people can't get enough of.
We were talking about this before we started. So yeah, my waiver video for week 11 is now up over 5,500 views, which is very, very exciting. Given I'm just about to hit 20,000 views for the channel, which is quite cool in less than 3 months. But amazing. I cannot work out. I'm happy they are. I cannot work out why people are going back and watching an old waiver video from 2 weeks ago. Like that, the content is so much fun to make. And I put one out earlier today, and it's already got a decent amount of views because they need it now. Like it's content they need to watch right now. But whereas, your rookie videos, people in March will be able to go back and watch the content from October. The moment Wednesday morning hits and waivers have run, that content should be useless. No one should be going back and watching it. And then clicking on the channel, clicking on my analytics and being like, this video is averaging 15 views per hour. And I'm like, this is useless to you. There's nothing you can get from this content now.
Exactly. But luckily we're going to give lots of content today that people can take with them for weeks and months to come, right, Lewis?
Exactly. So thinking about week 12, it was obviously absolutely insane at the end. I didn't actually watch a huge amount of the late window because it was obviously quite a strange one. But it was what, sort of 7 games in the early window and then 3 in the late window. And none of them were particularly interesting. You obviously had the Packers blowing out Brandon Allen, the Cardinals falling to pieces, And then I mean Broncos Raiders, sort of an interesting game, but nothing hugely vital watching. How did you find the early window though? What were your kind of immediate thoughts of what you enjoyed most?
I enjoyed my DFS lineup suddenly becoming good in the last 10 minutes of play. I was like, this is terrible. I'd rocking with Gene and Daniels and quite a lot of them. This guy's really let me down here. And then he finished QB1 on the week, in completely bizarre fashion. So that was quite nice seeing my money tick up. That's probably my favorite thing, Lewis, to be honest.
Yeah, that's always a nice thing. And that's something we're going to touch on a little bit later, actually, about that garbage time. So obviously last week we had a fair amount of buys. Going into this week, and this is incredibly exciting, we have none. There are no buys this week. And there is even a special slate of football. We obviously have 3 Thanksgiving games on Thursday. We have the Black Friday game Friday night. Obviously, with the nature of your job, I can't imagine you're going to be able to watch the early Thanksgiving slate. Will you be able to watch some stuff late on Thursday?
I'll catch as much as I can. There's only so much football my fiance will tolerate me watching, and I've just had a big weekend of sport as well. So I'll catch what I can. I'll watch them all in retrospect. I don't know if you are a big fan of this. Game in 40 is maybe my favorite feature that Game Pass does. It is absolutely brilliant. So I'll definitely catch a couple of games in 40. Are you a Thanksgiving UK guy, Lewis? Do you celebrate Thanksgiving? I know quite a lot. It's growing, right? It's getting bigger.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I fully celebrate it. So for a while, one of my best friends, one of my groomsmen actually, he used to play American football for Great Britain. And got me into the NFL, really. One of the people that got me into it. And he's an amazing cook. So he always used to cook this amazing Thanksgiving dinner and we'd watch all of the games. And we tried to keep that tradition up a little bit, obviously slightly harder now that we live across the country and now that there's partners and, it's not round the corner at uni and can drop me a message and say, I'm going to be outside with about 8 saucepans in 5 minutes. Come and help me bring them into your house. But I'll normally cook something nice and we'll normally sit and watch the games. This week is coinciding with my fiance going back to her parents to help get the house ready for Christmas. So it does mean that this week we're going to have and I work from home as well. Thanksgiving football, Black Friday football, college football Saturday, NFL Sunday. I'm going to watch every single minute.
Yes. That is amazing. And is your Thanksgiving dinner, is it basically just our Christmas dinner? There's not too much difference, is there?
It's kind of a roast, isn't it? Right? It's the same thing. I will tend to do mac and cheese. I'll tend to do a big mac and cheese because that's the main thing that Thanksgiving dinner tends to be different. But all of the sort of sweet potato casserole with marshmallows and a lot of the slightly strange candied yams. I don't think I understand what yams are. I don't really understand how you candy one. No. But yeah, so it tends to just be, I'll tend to just do sort of turkey, mac and cheese, gravy and some veg. That'll do all right.
I got a mac and cheese tip for you actually before we get into the show. A little bit whenever you're making the roux for the sauce, the cheese sauce, when you have the butter and the flour and the milk in there, just when you're frying off the butter in the flour, little bit of mozzarella, like fresh mozzarella, and then you get the stringiness right away, and the stringiness just keeps expanding throughout. Good tip for mac and cheese.
That's a very good tip. I'm a big fan of that. I've been playing recently in the last few years with what sort of different things can I do with mac and cheese now that I've got the roux down, but I am going to try that. Mm-hmm. And so a nice kimchi mac and cheese is a really nice touch. I've always enjoyed that. Not with a Thanksgiving dinner, because you want that more traditional, but a big kimchi mac and cheese, maybe with some crispy bits of bacon in there as well as a nice dinner. Goes a long way.
Sounds good.
Goes a long way.
I'm a big black pudding mac and cheese guy. That's my favorite one.
Oh, I've not had black pudding and mac and cheese.
That's top tier. That's
Ah, well, I'm going to be cooking dinner for myself on Thursday. So maybe I'll try that. I'll send you a picture if I do.
Sounds good.
But we are obviously not here to just talk food. We are here to talk about week 12. So the first thing, we obviously normally start off with our big news. There wasn't a huge amount this week, which is normally a good thing. No big news means that there's been no big injuries. We obviously had Brock Purdy missing time. Who really knows when he's going to be back? So I don't think we can have too much of a conversation until we find out a bit more from Kyle Shanahan. The only one that we did get was Gardner Minshew confirmed out for the rest of the season. Obviously, the Raiders' offense hasn't been good, but the sparse nature of it and the fact they're always playing from behind has been good news for Brock Bowers, especially, and also Jacoby Myers. Do you think this could have an effect on them rest of season? So obviously, Desmond Ridder came in, but Aiden O'Connell, I think, is back. So I don't know exactly who's going to start for them. Minshew's always willing to chuck it up and just continue doing so no matter what happens. Does this affect Bowers and Myers in your rankings rest of season, or do you think the situation's still the same? They're going to be behind and there's no one else on the depth chart?
Yeah, maybe a slight downtick, like ever so slightly, just because I think Minshew's the best thrower of the ball there. So I think a slight downtick for both, but nothing too major, I don't think, with Aiden O'Connell. I would need we have actual stats and numbers. I would need to go back and check and see what their performance was like with Aiden O'Connell, but I doubt it's drastically different. Plus, they had Devontae Adams then, so it was kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, I can't see. I mean, this is the thing. It's not as if it was a huge drop off from someone who was putting up good numbers. I think it's probably still going to be the same. And I also wanted, before we move on into the main bit of the agenda, to just kind of ask you how your season's looking at the moment as we're on the cliff of playoffs. How generally has the fantasy season been going for you?
Yeah, so redraft wise, this is kind of a late surge for me going into playoffs. I had a lot of Christian McCaffrey this year for whatever reason. It's kind of worked out that way. So now he's kind of back. I feel like a bit of a surge coming on. Been quite unlucky with a lot of injuries. Scott Fishbowl's well and truly over for me, unfortunately, because again, I took McCaffrey, I took like Rashee Rice, I took Chris Godwin. It was a whole mess basically. But I could see a couple of leagues now where I should be able to make the playoffs, and it's one of those ones where I know that I might be the last team that qualifies, but actually, when my team's fully fit and fighting, I should be up there with a chance of winning it. How about you, Lewis? You still crushing it in the Scott Fishbowl? Not checked up in a while.
I am 31st currently, so well above the line to get into the next round of playoffs, and I also have Lamar Jackson left to play. So I think there's a very good chance that I could end the first round of playoffs in the top 10, which would be very nice. Not that it hugely matters. It doesn't. Your average doesn't carry on into next week. But I went into the Scott Fishbowl playoffs with the 28th best average of the 2,500 that went into the first round of playoffs. Yeah. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. And one of the nicest things is that I have an absolute Bucks onslaught. And they've got such a cakewalk of a schedule in the playoffs. So I managed to come away from the draft with Baker, Mike Evans, Cade Otton, and Bucky Irving. And they are, every single one of them is making my lineup every single week at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
so
is
it's Scott Fishbowl is going very, very well. I keep looking at my team in the way that you do when things somehow go very well and just going, I don't really know how I managed to pull this off. Like it's so what? Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, and Russell Wilson. At running back is Jahmyr Gibbs, Achane, Pollard, Bucky Irving, and then other pieces. Kupp, Evans, Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver, and then tight end is Trey McBride, Cade Otton, and Taysom Hill. So it's like it could happen. It's unlikely. It's very hard to win these things, but it's been a hell of a season.
Yeah, you've been absolutely crushing it. I've got my fingers crossed for a first UK winner, Lewis. Couldn't go to anyone better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's get into the meat of our show. So I want to start off by thinking about what did we learn last week. So Will, you can kick us off, Mags. What did you learn from week 12?
So here's what happened in week 12. Cooper Rush was a quarterback one. Amir Abdullah was a running back one. David Moore was a wide receiver one, and Austin Hooper was a tight end one. So sometimes shit happens, and you just get lucky. You just get unlucky. No one's seen any of these coming, and sometimes you just have to go, you know what? It wasn't my week. Or you have to go, hey, I got really, really lucky that week. And it's all just part of the game. You can analyze things all you want. And then sometimes Cooper Rush plays a blinder when no one's seen it. David Moore comes, out of nowhere when no one had seen it coming. Like, no one's out there starting these 4 guys in a lineup and thinking they're going to win. So sometimes, especially at this time of year when every win and loss matters so much for playoffs, sometimes don't overthink it. Just go, you know what? I was just a bit unlucky this week. One of those things.
I think that is such a fair point. And this is the thing, like, league winners are going to come out of the woodwork that we absolutely don't expect. I quite often bring up a 2021, I think it was, Dynasty Championship redraft championship in a home league that I won with Justin Jackson as my RB2, that I don't even think he's still in the league, and he was only like 22 at that time. People are going to really come out of the woodwork, and I think you just have to, Hannah often says, it's about process. It's about getting the process right. And I think you have to be confident in your process. And if you had a team with Justin Jefferson as your wide receiver 1, that then he got outscored by David Moore, like, what are you supposed to do with that? There wasn't. You're not going to look at that and go. It's quite easy, You look at your roster after the game, and you think, if only I'd started, Nick Westbrook-Akine ahead of Justin Jefferson, and then you think, well, I wasn't going to, was it? Like, I would have been so stupid to do that. So I think it's a really fair point. I think it's a really fair point to make. It was a strange old week. The Justin Jefferson thing was bizarre. Was very, very weird.
Yeah, agreed for sure. What about you, Lewis? What kind of takeaways do you have?
So the main thing that I took from this week, and it was very much the learnings from the end of that early window that I mentioned earlier today, is really about the importance of garbage time, and is sort of about knowing that things aren't over until they're over. It's one of the reasons that actually having weapons on bad teams can be a good thing. So, like, we often think about this split of, like, you want the wide receivers and quarterbacks on bad teams, you want the running backs on good teams, because if they're ground and pound running backs, if the Ravens go down early, Derrick Henry has a bad game because he doesn't see work in the passing game. So if they have to score quickly and often, he doesn't have a great game. But if you have wide receivers on teams with vulnerable defenses that are going to be still needing to score points late, I mean, Terry McLaurin is the prime example. Like, Terry McLaurin was having a fine fantasy week. It was, 6 or 7 PPR points. It wasn't going to lose you the week, but it was fine. All of a sudden, they need a score, and he's suddenly up to, like, the wide receiver 18 on the week just from one big play. Like, I think it's really a case of, like, I know there's not a huge amount you can take from it in terms of how you then approach it, but it's about the mental side of it. It's about how do you approach looking at your fantasy teams and going, I've lost this. You've not lost it until the game is truly, truly over. And I promise, like, people will have won weeks based off the Cowboys defense housing an onside kick recovery that they shouldn't have done. Like, it was such a stupid thing to do. People will have won their leagues based off that, a random special teams touchdown. And so I just think, like, one of the huge takeaways, and this is something I would recommend to anyone who plays fantasy, is don't check your teams during the games. Like, have a look afterwards, set them. If you need to check at about, 9 p.m. our time, sort of 4 p.m. Eastern, and go, do I need to make any swaps? Like, how are things looking? Is everyone active? Fine. But it's so much of a worse experience when you just sit and stare at that green line on Sleeper and see how it's going. I don't know what your experience is, if you tend to check during a game or if you tend to leave it till afterwards.
Well, I'm in the lucky position that I'm such a degenerate that I'm in so many leagues that I would literally be pointless. Anytime anyone scores a point, I'm doing well somewhere. So it's literally no point in going through and checking. The only time I'll go in is if I see Ian Rappaport said this person's out for the late window. I'll go in and I'll look for them and change them. And that's really the only time I'll check it. My DFS lineups, I'm a bit worse for. I'm a bit worse for checking those more often. But in terms of fantasy, I'm more just like, you know what, let's just let it be. And yeah, it would take too long.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Like I mean, even just the process of setting lineups is hard enough with all of the managed leagues that I've got, let alone trying to then go through and be like, and again, you know, it's the different combination of the same players to be like, okay, Jamar Chase has got a touchdown. Okay, I'm up in this league. I'm down in this league. I could do with 4 points from Cooper Kupp, but if he gets 5, that's going to fuck me over. Like, oh my God, enjoy. Like, football is so close to being over. Sit and enjoy it. Yeah. Sit and enjoy the football in front of you. I think it's something which is really important to do, and something we forget quite a lot. Let's crack on into our main features. So we have 3 regular features. We have our stud, our scare, and our wild card. We are doing a competition. Let me get the stats currently. So each week we predict all 3 of these. Normally me, Paul, and Hannah. Hannah's not been around, so it's been yourself for a few weeks, and also Murph. You've actually done pretty well. You've helped Hannah out, which is a shame. And each week, the person who is most wrong gets a point. And the person with the most points at the end of the season has to do a monologue on a topic of the other host choosing. So currently, Hannah has 10 points, I have 12, and Paul has 13. So it is really all to play for. I think we've had a few weeks actually where it's the points have really just stayed the same. We've had 1 point each. Yeah. But while I have you and none of my other co-hosts, if you were to come up for a topic to give to Paul that he would hate, what would you go for?
Ooh, a topic that Paul would hate in terms of the monologue that he would have to do if he lost.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to hit him where it hurts. And I know that he loves the Welsh rugby union team and they stink right now. So that has to be involved. That he will not like that. You can go down the classic Cardinals one, but he's been jabbed by the Cardinals enough. I think with the Welsh rugby, that's a sore point for him, I think. So I would go poking around in there and just attacking the Welshness in general.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if with all of us, if you were to pick out, like, do a monologue about why your team sucks, like, yeah, the Cardinals sucked for a long time. Paul is very used to how they're quite crap. Hannah rants about how she hates the Bengals every single week on the show. I probably, if you were to tell me that Poo-Nior was overdrafted, like, I think I'd struggle with that one. But yeah, the Welsh rugby team, they are having a torrid time. I have a Welsh fiance, so I'm very aware of how awful a time they're having at the minute. We're having a very international show today, Mags. We've been talking about Thanksgiving. We've been talking about the Welsh rugby team. We're appealing to both sides of the pond with how we're targeting our content.
Absolutely. Lois at arms across the water, right? That's a term from, I think it's a term from like Northern Ireland in the 90s. It's like friends across bridges. Yeah, it was a whole thing. If you watch Dairy Girls, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a political time that I really want to talk about on this show.
Yeah, let's leave it.
Let's leave it. Let's leave it be. Let's think about our stud of the week. So last week, unfortunately, I mean, Paul did do quite well. He had Nick Westbrook-Akine, who I think has touched down 6 of the last 7 weeks. And I'm very intrigued on him. So I spoke about him on my waiver wire video this week. Can you tell me what kind of a player he is, what he looks like, how tall he is, how long he's been on the Titan? Like, can you tell me anything about Nick Westbrook-Akine?
Yeah, he looks like, if you ever played Madden, you got to create a character, the default person that pops up. That's what he looks like. That's kind of what Nick Westbrook-Akine is. He's got all the default stats. He's the default looking guy, but he keeps scoring touchdowns. So, fair play to him. I got him confused with Amir Smith-Marset. I thought he was like, I was like, didn't he play for the Chiefs at one stage? I got completely mixed up with a completely different player, which kind of tells you everything you need to know about Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. He's been in the Titans the entire time, his whole career. But there's obviously a gap there with DeAndre Hopkins. You know, they can't throw everything to Calvin Ridley, and he's stepped up, and good on him. I don't think that he's a great, long-term asset. I think he'll have a really good season, and we might never hear from him again, but fair play to him, because you can start him right now quite happily.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned confusing him for someone that was on the Chiefs, because as with all deep threat wide receivers, I presume Nick Westbrook-Ikhine will at some point find his way onto the Chiefs practice squad. That seems to be how it works.
Yeah, he'll be there.
Tyquan Thornton.
The ghost of MVS, like, still kicking about.
Yeah, I sort of forgot that Tyquan Thornton existed, and then he obviously suddenly pops up on the Chiefs practice squad, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a couple of players like that for the Chiefs this year. You're like, oh, okay, like, cool, we signed that guy.
So he finished as the wide receiver 23. He only caught 2 passes, but it was for 48 yards and a touchdown. I went with Alec Pierce, a relatively similar theory to Paul, to be honest. But he was the wide receiver 60. He only had 1 catch for 39 yards. And you went with Dallas Goedert with a late pivot from Devonta Smith. Dallas Goedert was the tight end 19, 4 catches for 19 yards. Given that basically Saquon could handle the entire workload last night, they did not need to pass the ball.
That guy is... I'm having an interesting chat about Saquon Barkley right now, and it is, I know we're a redraft show, but in Dynasty right now, I said to guys that I'm sorry, I said I'm going to need 2 first-round picks for Saquon. I don't care. Like, that's what I want, because he's running away with the running back 1. He's the most valuable player in Dynasty, like in fantasy football right now. I'm going to need that. And it seems stupid for such an old running back, but I'm not backing down this.
Yeah, well, I think we're at the point in the season where, like, people have to pay up, because first of all, you know where the firsts are going to be. But also, like, if you want to push for a title, you have to pay for it. And yeah, like, obviously we're entering the age of the old running back when you look at the scoring this season, but like, Saquon Barkley, like, he might be like the dynasty running back 3 now, if not higher, depending on how you rate Bijan and Breece Hall. Like, it's watching again. I did watch the game in 40 this morning, and it's every single highlight is just Saquon Barkley 15-yard run, Saquon Barkley 35-yard run, Saquon Barkley 70-yard run, and as a Rams fan, it wasn't overly fun to watch.
I can't remember if it was in this show or the Dynasty show. I can't wait for the new Madden to come out next year, and the only new feature is you can hurdle people backwards, and that's it. They don't change anything else.
They have already done it. They have already updated Madden 25 to add the backwards hurdle into it, and not fixed anything else, any of the other issues. They've already put the backwards hurdle into Madden 25.
Love it. I've not played this. The first year in forever. I've just gone, no, because I've just got I'm just enjoying college football. I'm like, I don't really need Madden to make me feel sad.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't really do a huge amount for me. So I think that this is probably me this week, wide receiver 60, and I am happy to take that point. If you're happy to give it to me, I don't think there's really an argument. Like, Dallas Goedert wasn't amazing, but I think wide receiver 60 is the loser here.
I think so.
So let's have a think about our picks for this week. Who have you gone with, Mags?
So I've gone back to, what works. Obviously, I'm filling in here for Hannah, and I'm going back to WWHD. What would Hannah do? Hannah would see her Bengals are playing the Steelers, so she would pick a Steelers player, a.k.a. George Pickens, wide receiver 17 in the year, to be the stud of the week. If he's not, good for the Bengals. If he is, good for Hannah. It's a win-win.
What have your thoughts been on Pickens this year? Obviously, he's having a kind of a breakout season, but it seems to be very up and down. How do you own much of him? What have your thoughts been?
Some George Pickens. My statement of George Pickens has been the same ever since he's come into the league, and it is he has got sort of all the gifts in there, including this like ethereal, can't put your finger on kind of like X factor that he has. And every now and again, you'll see him break out with it, and you're like, wow, if only he could get. I mean, it's maybe it's between the years that he's struggling. He is a pretty weird guy, so I wouldn't be too shocked there to see that's what his issue is. He's got every tool in it. I think he can still keep growing and going up. I think playing with Russ is probably going to help him because Fields not the best passer in the world. So Pickens is a really good, solid player. He's that sort of wide receiver 2 in your team that you're really happy to have. And I still think, I don't know what age he is. He's not been in the league that long. I still think he has that elite kind of upside that he could break into the wide receiver 1 conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the big thing with Pickens for me is that I don't think there's barely any other wide receivers that I would rather pair up with Russell Wilson. Like genuinely, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase. It might be George Pickens, like in terms of just ability to win deep down the field, but not just through speed, through strength as well, and through contested catchability. Like, yeah, so I can really see this one. I think it's a player I've actually ended up owning quite a lot of in Dynasty, and someone that I've been quite enjoying being able to start this season because with the litany of quarterbacks last season, it wasn't really quite so exciting. I have gone with, a similar kind of player, actually, Brian Thomas Jr. against the Texans. Now, BTJ, at the start of the season, through the first sort of 5-6 weeks, this was the guy. There were conversations about whether he was actually the wide receiver 1 in the last wide receiver class, in the rookie wide receiver class. It was really like he could be a league winner. He went in sort of the 7th, 8th round. And then Trevor Lawrence got hurt. And the Jags started playing awfully, and it really, really fell off. And he's not really been startable for the rest of the season. I'm going to pull up his stats here because I do actually have them in front of me. Yeah, so for the first 7 weeks, he finished in the top 10 3 times, but also only had 2 finishes outside the top 30. Since then, it's been wide receiver 27, wide receiver 59, 75, and wide receiver 30 in week 11. They were on bye this last week. The reason why I've gone with him is that they are playing the Texans in week 13. The Texans have conceded not just the highest amount of touchdowns from 30 plus yards. I think it's twice as many as the second team. The Texans are really getting beat deep. And we saw Will Levis absolutely cook them this last week. Divisional matchups are always very strange. Trevor Lawrence actually practiced today. I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to miss the rest of the season, but he practiced today. But even if he doesn't make the game on Sunday, I think there's a chance that BTJ could make it work with Mac Jones. I think he's talented enough that he might be able to, and I think he's going a little bit under the radar because obviously people are worried about him playing with Mac Jones. So I think potentially could be in luck with Brian Thomas Jr. this week if you've held on to him. Paul has gone with Xavier Worthy, obviously wide receiver for your Chiefs. Worthy coming off probably his best game as a Chief, would you say, last night?
It's between that and the game against the Bills, weirdly enough. The last 2 weeks, he's been really, really good. I watched the game Sunday night, obviously, and they put up a really interesting graphic, which was Rashee Rice versus Xavier Worthy through 10 games. Very close to the number of receptions, yards per receptions, touchdowns. I think Worthy had more touchdowns even. So he's coming along in the same way that Rashee Rice did, and we've seen what happened towards the end and into the playoffs with Rashee Rice. He really took off and set fire. While they're not, identical players, Rashee Rice much sort of bigger, more physical. The way that they're getting more involved in the city and the Kansas City offense is really encouraging. So Xavier Worthy just continues to impress me and get better and better. But more on that later. I'll leave it hanging.
Interesting. Interesting. So with that in mind, let's get on to our scares. So this is a hyped up player that we think could be disappointing for the week to come. I'm afraid I think this point's coming your way, Mags. So I said last week Brock Bowers, who finished as a tight end 17, which is pretty good work. Paul absolutely smashed it again with the what would Hannah do mentality. He went with Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a torrid game, so 3 receptions for 47 yards. I saw someone posted on Twitter, Marvin Harrison Jr. has eclipsed 55 yards 3 times this season.
What?
That is absolutely dreadful. He's had 3 games inside the top 20. He's had as many games outside the top 40 as he's had inside the top 20 this season. Is he like, we talk a lot about CMC for being injured and Tyreek Hill for obviously struggling without Tua there, and some other issues towards the top of the first round. Marvin Harrison Jr. was going at the back of the first round. Is he the biggest fancy bust of this season?
Yeah, and in terms of like injuries aside, because that's not really something you can control, it's hard to look past him, right? You put so much effort in. And the big issue with him is, at least with Christian McCaffrey, he sat in your injured reserve. Marvin Harrison Jr. was costing you weeks because you were starting him, thinking, this is the week, this is the week, this is the week. And it's just not really clicked with them. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is such a good prospect that this is on the Cardinals more than it is with Marvin Harrison Jr. How can you not get that guy more involved?
Yeah, like this was the surefire thing. And yeah, sometimes we get that wrong and sometimes these players bust, but like more often than not, that's at the quarterback position. We are quite good as a community and then the NFL as a whole at judging those blue chip prospects and knowing that they are going to hit. It feels like a coaching issue or a usage issue more so than this guy is bad at football. Like this was the guy. This was the person that even when Jamar Chase was coming out, even when, I mean, like JSN as the wide receiver 1 in that class, everyone that came out, it was like, yeah, they're good. They're not that guy.
I think he'll turn it around. I've got no real huge long-term worries about him, but this year, just you got it. Especially when you look at Brian Thomas Jr. doing really well, Malik Neighbors doing well with, I mean, worst quarterback play to say the least. Like they got to get him more involved. Yeah,
a terrible season for Marvin Harrison Poo-Nior. You went with Chuba Hubbard, who was the running back 12 on the week. He scored a touchdown.
He was absolutely rubbish. He did score that touchdown, but the rest of the game he was terrible. And this kind of shows you this must have been a really bad week for running backs, because Hubbard got almost no gain every single time. Like a lot of his points I don't know if it's rush per attempt or whatever points you get for that, because he tried to rush the ball a hell of a lot of times. And he did absolutely nothing against that Chiefs offensive line or defensive line. But he did sneak in for a touchdown, which I think really elevated him up. He had a hell of a lot of carries. I wasn't afraid of Chuba Hubbard in the slightest watching that game. And then he did sneak in for that touchdown, which really must have pushed him up. But I think I probably would have lost anyway, even without that. That you guys both absolutely smashed it with those picks. So not any shame in taking a point there when you two both did so well.
Yeah, it was a good week. I'm just having a look through sort of like just the rushing yards of the top 12 running backs. And I mean, the top 6 are all sort of, I mean, obviously Saquon in leagues above with 255. The top 6 are all hovering either over 100 or around sort of 85 plus. Then the rushing yards of the other running backs that make up the top 12, it's basically all just touchdowns. So Achan, 32 rushing yards. Nick Chubb, 59. Amir Abdullah was RB9 on the week, 28 rushing yards. David Montgomery 37, Jalen Warren 45, and Chuba Hubbard with 58. So it does seem like it was just a terrible, terrible week. I mean, James Conner was the RB 19. Do you want to guess how many yards he rushed for?
I can tell you it wasn't a lot because he was in one of my DFS lineups, and I was like, "What is going on here? Like, come on!" Was it under 30? I'm not sure.
It was 8.
Ha!
It was 8. The RB 19 on the week had 8 rushing yards.
That's like you can quarterback sneak to 8 yards. Like, just run a couple of sneaks and you'll get to 8 yards quite quick.
So let's look to this week. What a strange week.
Yeah.
I will go first. So I've gone with Bijan Robinson. I think it's fun to shoot for the moon with your scares and go for a big player. It's more fun if you get it right. The Chargers defense is really good as a rush defense, and they're good at sort of shutting down that lead option. I think the Falcons defense is very, very suspect as well, not offering a huge amount of pressure. And Justin Herbert, like, potentially in that MVP conversation, he's having an absolutely fantastic year that people aren't really noticing because he's not really showing up in fantasy. And I think there's a chance that the Falcons get behind early and therefore have to throw a lot more. Obviously, Bijan Robinson involved in the passing game. But I think this could be a week that he struggles. This feels like one that I might end up accidentally calling the running back one on the week. But shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you land amongst the stars. Who have you gone with this week, Mag?
So, Lewis, obviously earlier, I told you how impressed I was with this guy. I kind of teased it a little bit. I said, all these stats, great. Looking fantastic. Best 2 games in a row for the Chiefs. However, there is one fatal flaw with Xavier Worthy, which has made me choose him as my fantasy scare of the week. And it's that Paul Pickett picked him as a stud of the week. And Paul is always wrong, so I'm going to just go the opposite and put him as my scare of the week. And it's guaranteed not to be a point for Hannah, because no way Paul's going to be right.
That is very, very solid logic. Sometimes we don't have to play with stats. We have to play our opponent. We have to play the opposition. Paul has gone with, I think Paul's gone with a what would Hannah do situation. Paul's gone with Joe Burrow. I mean, this could be an interesting one. So the Bengals are playing the Steelers. I mean, those in-division matchups are always insane. But then in the last few weeks, the Steelers shut down Lamar Jackson. The Steelers shut down Jaden Daniels. They could potentially do the same to Joe Burrow. There is a chance with a worse offensive line. I don't hate this one. So let's close it off with our final feature, our wild card of the week. This is a regular feature. We suggest something. We actually suggest 2 things that we think could happen in the week to come. The less likely, the better. So I said Panthers Chiefs would be a 1-score game. It was a 1-score game, but also came down to the absolute wire. Which was pretty good. I also said that Jameis would throw 2 or more picks. He only threw 1. Obviously, slight caveat that I didn't know it was going to be in the snow. So maybe there was less passing than I thought there was going to be.
Neither did he. It seemed like he was so happy.
I got a message from my fiance sharing that video of Jameis Winston sort of nearly tearing up when he saw that the snow was coming, just going, this man is so wholesome. Like, this is incredible.
And then there was the other clip of him, like when he was trying to draw the defense offside, and like the last thing, he's like, come on, somebody jump offside. It's so good.
He's a hell of a character. Paul said that Seahawks, Rams, and 49ers would win, and all teams would finish this week 6-5 in the NFC West. That didn't happen. Neither. So actually, did all? No. did all three? No, two of those teams won. Yeah, the Cardinals lost to the
Yeah.
Seahawks, but the Rams and the 49ers both lost and both got absolutely blown out as well. He also said that two players from the Broncos would score rushing touchdowns, and no one did. There was not a rushing touchdown on the Broncos this week. Then, Mags, you said Tommy DeVito would shock the world and the Giants would win.
Oh no, they didn't.
He didn't.
we did get to see the celebration though. So I'll can I get anything, because we've seen the DeVito celebration, right?
Well, I mean, not to sort of spoil the points giving process, but yeah, Paul's not here this week. You can have half a point for that.
Yeah, I agree.
And you said at least 5 quarterbacks would have a rushing touchdown this week. Only 3 did: Baker Mayfield, Jaden Daniels, and Jameis Winston. So you and Paul both had both wrong. The way, I mean, I've given you half a point for just Tommy DeVito existing. But the way that I decided earlier that I thought to give out this point is that I think you went bolder with yours than Paul did with his. I also think Paul was probably more wrong with the Broncos rushing touchdowns compared to 3 of 5 getting a rushing touchdown. So I am happy to give Paul the point on this one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean,
sense.
that was, what did he pick? Two favorites to win in a three-leg parlay? Like, you're getting almost no return on that, Paul. That's not a wild card pick. Come on.
Yeah. Which once again means, so this is actually the 3rd week in a row that all 3 of us have got 1 point each. Yeah, you've done that. So we have each, the last 3 weeks have counted for nothing. The scores have stayed the same. We've each got 3 points. It's made no difference.
You know, I think Hannah would have taken that, knowing I was going to make her picks for 3 weeks in a row. I think she would have taken, whole serve. That I'm sure she's happy.
Well, what I will say is, obviously Murph did week 9, and then you've done week 10, 11, and 12. Murph got Hannah 2 points, and you've only got Hannah 3 points from 3 weeks.
I'll take it. Hopefully she's pleased. And that'll be the end. No more points. Next week you'll see, Hannah, you got 0 points because I've nailed all these picks. Don't you worry.
Well, let's see with your wild card of the week. What have you gone for your wild card for week 13?
Okay. I think this is the week we're going to see a team held to a big fat 0. Someone's not going to get on the board this week. I feel like it's been bubbling a little bit. I think we're going to see a team get held to 0 in week 13. And then I thought I'd throw one out there. We were talking earlier about these rookies and how well they're doing and rookie mock drafts. So I feel a little bit of rookie fever. So I think there's going to be a rookie appear in the top 12. So be like a number 1 quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. There'll be a rookie in there in the top 12 positions for each of them.
I absolutely love that. My first question to you, running back.
Yeah,
if you were to guess right now, like Tyrone Tracy against the Giants, as against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, probably the one you have to hope for.
Yeah, it's either going to be Tyrone Tracy. I don't know who the Bucs are playing, but Bucky Irving has a shot as well. Jonathan Brooks took the field. Jonathan Brooks did appear. So I do still believe in Jonathan Brooks if they give him a workload that he is good enough to try and at least get up there. But Chuba's playing well enough, right? So they'll probably avoid that. And of course, Lewis, do not count out. It's coming. This is Blake Corum week. This is where they push aside Kyron Williams, that absolute dog of a player, and Blake Corum's coming.
Well, do you know what? I posted about this earlier today that, like, I think the Rams are going to start falling out of love with Kyron Williams with the fumbling issues. So this is very off topic. My issue with Kyron is I can't really work out. So it's vision, right? It's vision and it's patience and it's the being a running back stuff. And he's a good pass blocker. But I just think like when he ran the 4.740 and dropped down people's boards, and he went in the sixth round of the NFL draft, I think you're starting to see it. I think you're starting to see that lack of athleticism. And you mix that with fumbling, it could be Blake Corum week. And if it is, and he finishes as a top 12 running back, I'll be absolutely delighted about it.
Absolutely.
So to close us off, I have said I've gone with over-unders with both of mine. I haven't actually looked at what the actual over-unders are, but I've gone quite bold with both of them. I think Giants-Cowboys is going to be combined less than 20 points. Ooh. And I think Steelers-Bengals is going to be over 60 points. So very basically, that Thanksgiving Giants-Cowboys is going to absolutely stink. That is going to be absolutely dreadful.
Yeah. I can see that, like Tommy DeVito versus Cooper Rush. Who would have thought that's what we were going to be seeing? Even if it is DeVito, could be Drew Lock by that stage. That's going to stink. And the Steelers Bengals, that's the one to watch. Then obviously, that's if you're going to strap in for any game this weekend. Load that one up, right?
Absolutely. And then Paul has gone also with something around Thanksgiving. So he said that all of the home teams win on Thanksgiving. So that would be, if I can just get the games up quickly, that would be the Lions, that would be the Cowboys, and that would be the Packers. Which I think I don't know about the Cowboys Giants. I think he's just chosen three favorites again.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's chosen three home favorites.
And then AJ Brown to get over 100 yards and a touchdown.
I think as a little acca there, as a little parlay, Paul, between those two, you might get, I don't know, like 50 quid off a tenner. Like
that's less of a wild card. That's like a 4 of clubs, Paul. Come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah, make wild cards wild again.
Absolutely.
That is going to bring us to the end of the show. Before we close off, Mags, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people hear more from you?
Yeah, go check out the Dynasty Hot Seat over on YouTube. Hit a subscribe if you want to check out some rookie content. If you're into Dynasty, check out Rebuild that I'm doing, which is powered by Nick Westbrook-Akeen at the minute as well. Absolutely crushing it. He's in that lineup. We also started Samaje Perine and I believe Dalvin Cook this week. So that shows you how bad this rebuild is really going. So go check out, subscribe, and make sure you're over on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. Check Dynasty Hot Seat Mags, all that good stuff.
Lovely stuff. So thank you so much for joining me today, Mags, and thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe us on X at Wildcard Rewind. Head on over to our YouTube channel, search for us at Fantasy Wildcard Podcast Network, and make sure you give us a subscribe, and we will see you in week 14, where we will be beginning the fantasy playoffs. Take care. Take it easy. See you next time.